Am I wrong for not inviting my sister to my wedding? I, 27 female, have been married to my husband Jay for over 10 years. We got married 6 years ago, but only did it through the court and we never had a wedding. We always said later, but timing was not on our side. Well, it finally is. We decided to have our wedding ceremony and reception later this year and invite our close friends and family. We were doing our guest list and decided that my older sister would not be invited. She has been a toxic person in my life since I can remember. When I started dating Jay, she used to tell him that he could do so much better than me. I've never been someone that wears a lot of makeup, and Jay has always known this. She used to tell me that he was going to leave me because I didn't take care of myself. I suffer from an eating disorder and have been impatient. She told Jay that I was crazy and shouldn't be dealing with me and should just leave me. When I was at said impatient, she tried to use me to get an excuse for her job so she wouldn't have to do something she didn't want to, all under the pretense of helping with our girls. This was my second day there. When I told her I couldn't, she called me selfish and why couldn't I do this for her, and didn't reach out for the 2 months I was in there, and just so much more. As the years have gone by, Jay has stood up for me time and time again and let her run over me. This is something I've had trouble with. She hates this. She mentioned one time that he shouldn't get involved in sister matters. We had a traumatic childhood, so I felt like we just had to be close. I think it's part of why I've had such a hard time cutting her off. Anyways, last Thanksgiving we got into a fight. Jay and I tried to have a civilized conversation and put all differences aside and move forward. It did not go well and she played victim at all times. Jay and I knew we tried. She brushed it under the rug and a few days later was back to normal. After that, a month later, Jay and I had to leave for 2 months for a training and I stayed alone with my 2 girls. She made all these promises of coming to visit us and keep us company, and so did her husband. They ended up coming to our state and then kept making up excuses as to why they couldn't come. She didn't talk to me until she was back to the state she lives in. I was annoyed because they also promised my 6-year-old and then just left her hanging. After they went back, she texted twice and I briefly answered once since I was annoyed and honestly didn't want to get into a fight. A week and a half after the text, the girls and I got into a car accident. Car was totaled and it wasn't pretty. Thankfully, the girls had minor injuries. She never reached out, never cared. My mom and younger sister came to help and called her in FaceTime and she gave me an attitude. It was like something clicked and I was just done. She's a negative and toxic person for me, blood related or not. Obviously, I told my family she will not be invited and they know everything, but they still want me to be the bigger person because she's your sister no matter what, and just be the bigger person again. I've stood my ground, but am I the asshole? Update. We had the wedding this weekend and it was everything we could have wished for and more. We were so happy to finally have this day and share it with our loved ones. These past few months I've been in therapy to deal with just different things, and obviously the topic of my family has come up. My sister and I actually had a talk about a month and a half ago, just her and I. She apologized for a lot of things which she has never done before, so I appreciated that. We also realized that this was the first time we actually sat down to talk, just her and I. No one else involved. My mom would usually want to be there and then meddle, then send messages back and forth, but it was never what me and my sister said. We realized my mom had a lot to do with our relationship and how it went. She knew some of her actions were toxic, and that's when she apologized about it, and we had a genuine talk about it. Afterwards, we talked at least weekly, and you could feel the difference now that we had talked about everything. She ended up coming to the wedding, and there was no drama at all. We really had the best time, and everyone got along perfectly. Aww. Thank you for all the support. Aw, that's so sweet. Best update ever.
Story time about how my aunt drugged me. So a little background information. I was 16 and in 10th grade. And I had never met my aunt before, but whenever my parents talked about her, it was only bad things. Well, the one day I went to go and ask my mom something and I heard her on the phone with someone. She was like, "No, I'm not giving you any more money. It's not my fault if you spent it all on drugs." And we barely talked about my aunt, so I didn't know that's who she was talking to. Fast forward, I come home from school the one day and my dad's sitting on the porch with this woman who looks like she's homeless. My dad introduces her. He's like, "Oh, by the way, this is your aunt." He was like, "Oh, well, she wants to spend some time with you, so you're gonna go with her for a few hours." I was hesitant because of all of the stuff that my mom had told me about her, but I started walking down to her car and my mom whips in the driveway. Eventually, my aunt ends up talking my mom into letting me see her, and apparently my aunt has been asking to see me for a very long time. So she takes me to the mall, we eat, we get our nails done, and at this point I'm thinking she's kind of normal until she takes me to her house. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, she ended up talking my mom into letting me go with her, which I was super grossed out because she smelled really bad and her car was a mess, but she took me to the mall. I thought she was normal. And then she took me to her house. When we got into the neighborhood, I kind of recognized it because my grandma lived in the same neighborhood. But anyways, we pull up and it is literally trashed. Like there's fucking garbage all outside of the house. And I walked inside thinking that it would be better. No, it was filthy. There were needles everywhere. You could definitely tell that druggies lived there. And they had weird pictures hanging up all over the walls of these girls, random girls. Like when I asked who they were like, "Oh, I don't know." So then her boyfriend's walking around the house. He's like 40 years old, walking around in his boxers around me. So I call my mom, I go outside and I'm waiting for her. And my aunt comes out and she's like, "Do you want a glass of water?" She gave me some water and it tasted really sour and I had chugged the whole thing. And that was the last thing I remember before I woke up on her couch in the morning. Like for part 3. Part 3 about my aunt who drugged me. So like I said, I was sitting outside on the stairs waiting for my mom, and she comes over to me and asks me if I want a drink, and I'm like, sure. So I chugged the water and it tasted sour. Woke up in the morning on her couch. And when I woke up, my aunt was in the middle of doing drugs. And some random lady who I don't even know how she got there, she asked me if I wanted a cigarette or if I wanted any of the drugs. So I got up, I was like, no, I don't do drugs. And I ran out of the house, and I was like super dizzy when I got up. So I ate shit on the way out of the house. I ran outside, I ran into this lady, I asked her to use her phone. I told her a little bit of what happened. After, I ran towards my grandma's house, and my mom came and picked me up, and I got grounded for 3 months because my aunt drugged me and my mom let me go with my aunt. Story time about how my best friend was obsessed with me. And I'm not saying obsessed as in, oh my god, like, you know, she does her hair like me. No, I'm saying in a creepy way. So a little background information, I was 14 and it was the summer before I was going into high school. And I had this best friend who we're gonna call Madison. Now, I met Madison like a month before school ended. She was one of those kids that nobody really liked and nobody wanted to be near. But we were partnered up in this one class, and she's actually really funny. So since summer just started, I invited her over to have a sleepover at my house. Everything went well, we were swimming, we watched movies, but my house was in a really wooded area, so if you had certain phone carriers, you wouldn't get any reception. So she asked if she could use my iPad to text her dad, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, so I let her use it, and then we went to sleep. Well, I woke up around 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend was obsessed with me in a creepy way. So like I said, I woke up at 3 in the morning because my phone kept going off, and it wasn't dinging or anything, it was just the light flashing when it would go off and on. So I look around for Madison, and then I see my bathroom light is on but the door is shut. So I just brush it off and I go on my phone, and I see a bunch of text messages that were sent from me, but they weren't sent from me. Like, obviously, somebody had went on my iPad and started sending people messages. So I look at these messages, and it's all texting Madison. And I kid you not, it's literally pictures of me while I'm sleeping that she sent to herself. Like, there was a picture of my hair, a picture of one of my birthmarks. And then on her side of the nightstand, there was literally a lock of my hair. Like, she cut my hair off. And it was in a Ziploc bag. So at this point, I'm actually really creeped out, and I go and tell my mom. And my mom talked to her mom, and apparently she's done this before, about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're gonna call my best friend Ashley. Ashley was really nice at first. She always had my back when I needed her. But then out of nowhere, she started being super rude to me. She turned into one of those pick-me girls that would always make fun of you in front of other guys, talk crap about you to the guy that you liked. Well, the one day I hear her talking shit about me whenever we were in class, and everybody could hear her. She was literally on the whole other side of the class. And I asked her, hey, like, why were you talking about me? She was like, no, I was talking about a different girl. And I had a pretty unique name, so I was like, who else in the school could you have been talking about? But I just brushed it off. Well, then we were in algebra class, and I heard her talking shit about me again. How I do my makeup so bad and I can never get a boyfriend, like I'm so ugly and all that stuff. Well, she thought that I wasn't mad at her, so she came up to me the one day and was like, OMG, I have a boyfriend. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So like I said, she would talk shit about me all the time, and I only confronted her that one time, so she thought that we were all good. So the one day before class starts, she runs up to me, she's like, oh my god, you'll never guess what? I have a boyfriend. She's like, he's so cute, he's really popular, he's on the football team. And I was like, girl, whatever, nobody cares. Until I'm sitting in my first class of the day, and I remember that she made out with my boyfriend last year. I forgave her, of course. But because karma was taking a little bit too long, I figured I had to do something about it myself. So my plan was to hook up with her boyfriend. Do I feel bad about it? Absolutely not. So I went to my school's football game, and guess who I saw? My best friend's boyfriend. She couldn't make it that night, she had something to do, so I had him all to myself. So I went up to him, I started flirting with him, and I was like, oh, you should break up with your girlfriend and date me instead. But then he was like, I thought you guys were best friends and I would never date you. Like for part 3 about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So like I said, I went to the football game. She wasn't there because she had something else to do. I went up to him, I started flirting. I told him that he should break up with her and date me instead. And I also said that she was a bitch and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he was like, why would you say that about your best friend? And he was like, I would never date you. And I had a feeling this would happen. So I had photoshopped a picture of her and this guy that she sits next to in her lab class. And I showed it to him and I was like, see, she's cheating on you. So he was pissed off. He gave me his number. And the next day he came over to my house. We cuddled, watched movies, we kissed. After 3 months, Ashley found out. We hadn't talked to each other since then, but now I am 16 in 10th grade and still with her ex-boyfriend. Funny thing though, the picture that I photoshopped with her and that guy, she's literally dating him now. So you're welcome, I guess. But anyway, she still goes around talking shit on me. I mean, who can blame her? I did steal. Story time about how I found out that my mom was sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So it was my junior year of high school, and everybody knows that your junior year is the most important year of high school. If you didn't, well, now you know. My brother was in his senior year of high school, and when he was a junior, he had the same teacher, so he knew how hard the class was. So he would stay up with me every night helping me to pass my history class. Well, the one day I'm at school and I'm taking a test, and I literally did not know anything on the test. And I studied the night before for literally 4 hours straight. So I decided to copy off the girl next to me. Well, a few days later, we get our test back. And I'm looking at mine, and I got a 97%. And then I look over to the girl next to me. She got a 33%. And then I started going through the tests. None of the essay questions looked like my handwriting. But I didn't say anything because I wanted that A. Well, the one night, I'm sitting down with my family having dinner. And I told them that I copied off the girl next to me. And how I got a 97% and she got a 33%. And my brother flips out like for part 2. Part 2 of my mom sleeping with my history teacher to get me better grades. So like I said, I told my parents that I got a 97, she got a 33. And I was telling them how the handwriting didn't even look like mine and everything. And then my brother starts flipping out. In front of my dad, too. He goes, "Mom, are you fucking serious? You couldn't let her try and do this on her own?" And I was super confused. Like, I thought that maybe he was talking about my mom paid off the teacher. But then he said, "Yeah, Dad, if you didn't know, Mom's been fucking our history teacher to get us better grades." And then he goes, "Mom, you're such a fucking whore." And my mom's sitting there not even fazed. She just took a drink of her wine and said, "Get the fuck upstairs now." Before my brother leaves the table, he goes, "Maybe you can fuck Dad's boss too. Maybe he'll get a raise." And then I realized what was happening. And it's around 6:30 p.m. So after that, a lot of stuff happened. My dad obviously wanted to get a divorce at that point. So my dad took my brother and I to our grandparents. And we stayed with them for like 2 weeks. But then everybody at school found out. And we got made fun of a lot. And then after that, we moved schools. Story time, my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So a little background information. I was a sophomore in high school, and the one night my friends and I were playing Truth or Dare. Well, a little bit into the game, my friends dared me to download Tinder and message the first 5 guys that I saw. And what do you know, the last guy that I saw on there was my gym teacher. So obviously I messaged him and I was like, "Hey, OMG, it's blah 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 from your 3rd period class." And obviously I wasn't expecting him to answer, but he did, and he was like, "Oh, this is weird. How are you?" So after that, my friends were like, "Oh, okay, like it's time to delete it." So I pretended that I did, and when they left, I started messaging him more. So we had been messaging that whole week, and one thing led to another. Next thing I knew, he was sneaking me out of my house at 2 a.m. And he was like 32, so he wasn't that old. Well, for the next month, we were going to restaurants that were like an hour away. Almost every weekend, he would rent out a hotel for us. Well, the one night, his wife was supposed to be out with some friends. So he invited me over like for part 2.
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? His best friend is a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We actually met a couple of months ago on a dating app. We went on several dates over the course of 4 months, and after that he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. While we were dating, I met a couple of his friends, one of them being his girl best friend, and she is bi, which I did know of. Okay, but here's the messed up thing. The day I met this girl, she was staring at me. Not just like staring at me a little bit, hardcore staring. She even told my boyfriend that I was so attractive that he needed to take care of me because she could snatch me up. And she said this in front of me. My boyfriend thought it was hilarious and just laughed at her. And to be honest with you, even though yes, she's a girl, she made me feel extremely uncomfortable. She would always compliment my body in front of everybody. She would comment on how my boobs are so big. We all went to the beach one time, and she said, I quote, "If your bikini top pops off, I don't mind, girl." I did not laugh. She even went up behind me and tried to untie my bikini. My boyfriend thought it was so funny. Part 2 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on me on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid, she's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was gonna steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party and there were tons of people, but she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is
Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimers on my story time on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around, and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just gonna take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her, and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimers are not my story time on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl, and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, "Do you mind if she comes over?" And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time, I was gonna defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up, and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, "What, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again?" Instead, I smacked her. Really, really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimers are not my story time, it's on Instagram. The bitch that used to be my best friend, yeah, she's the worst person in the entire world. By the time I met her, my boyfriend and I had already been going out for 6 months. I met her through some friends and her and I got along really well. She was wild and crazy and she brought that wild and crazy side out of me. And at the time it was something that I did need, but I didn't realize just how wild she was. Let me tell you what this girl was like. She was the type of girl that would try to bring up sex in every conversation. Like no matter who we were talking to, she would always bring up sex. She would always try to impress everyone about how much she knew about it and how much she needed sex all the time. And sometimes I would ask her to not talk about it so much, and her response to that was, "Stop being such a prudy bitch." My boyfriend and I decided to have all our friends over at my apartment for dinner. Since I had just met her, I decided to invite her over. This was the first time she was meeting my boyfriend and all of my friends. And of course, she proceeded to monopolize the entire conversation all night, and all she talked about was sex. Then she went to the bathroom and took off her jacket. She came out in her bra and shorts. Part 2 is story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to, and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously, all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was gonna go out with his friends and I was gonna go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer's not my story time, it's on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no, girl, I'm just thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink. You can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says, "He's cute, but he's not that cute." What? Part 4 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. She looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do? Story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. I'm 25 years old, and my mom just turned 40. She was 15 years old when she had me, so she was a really young mom. So obviously when my mom and dad were teenagers, they got pregnant with me. My mom hadn't even graduated from high school when she had me. My dad at the time, though, was in college, so he was a lot older than her. Obviously, looking back at their relationship, I think it was totally inappropriate. I've never said this to my dad, but I'm definitely open about it with my mom. Luckily, my grandparents stepped in and helped them financially, so I grew up in a really nice house going to a good school. The problem is that my parents basically had to do whatever my grandparents wanted them to. So my dad really hated my mom's parents. When I turned 13, my parents got divorced. My dad basically told my mom that he did not want to be in this relationship anymore. He was sick of her parents and that he didn't even want to live in the city we were living in. This was really hard for me, but it was even harder for my mom. She was left alone raising me while my dad went and partied. He was reliving his youth again, but this time the way he wanted it to be. I truly believe this, but my mom denies it. I think she started harboring resent for me. The fact that she had to stay home with me and take care of me. She wanted to go out with guys and drink and party. I was always in the way. Part 2 is story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. I knew my mom resented me for having to take care of me instead of being able to go out with their friends and date men. When I turned 15, things started getting really difficult between me and my mom. My dad went off to New York, completely abandoned me and my mom, and went to live his dream. He wanted to be an actor, and he actually started getting successful at it. The good thing is, he started sending my mom a lot of money. This meant my grandparents weren't having to pay for everything, and it allowed my mom financial freedom from them, which meant she could do whatever she wanted. So instead of staying home with me, my mom decided to start going out. This actually made me really happy. This allowed us to have some space from each other, and she was able to go and have fun. Our relationship got a lot better because my mom was just happier. She even got a new boyfriend. My grandparents hated it, but she was so much happier. Fast forward 10 years later. My mom and I are very close and we still live together. 2 weeks before my 25th birthday, my boyfriend broke up with me. I caught him cheating on me with my best friend, which is a whole other story time, so if you guys want to hear that one, let me know. By the way, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My mom just started dating a new guy. This new guy was my age. Every time he would come over to be with my mom, he and I would just stare at each other. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I stole my mom's boyfriend. Every time my mom's boyfriend would come over to visit her, he and I would just stare at each other. Like I said, he was my age, and he and I got along really well. Now, nothing happened, and it's not like I was trying to do anything. My mom would talk about him all the time, and I would tell her how happy I was for her, because I really was. But before you jump into the comments to criticize me, remember that my boyfriend had just broken up with me because I caught him cheating with my best friend. It was a struggle to get out of bed every single day. I thought I was gonna marry this man. My mom had an upcoming work trip, and I knew that I was gonna be alone. I told her that I was afraid of being alone, and she said, "Well, I can have my boyfriend come over and take you out to dinner one day." I said, "Sure." Obviously not thinking anything would ever come of it. So one day he asked me if I wanted to go to dinner and I said yes. We were at dinner for like 4 hours and it felt like a first date. We talked about so much stuff and we had so much in common. We ended up having too many drinks and we both got a little drunk. And when we got in his car, we started making out. Then we went to my house and made out some more. And then we did the dirty. This only happened 2 days ago. Let me clarify, I don't want him. I want him to be with my mom. But now he's telling me that he wants to be with me and my mom. He's asking me to basically not tell my mom that we're hooking up. He wants to stay with her. What should I do? Here's a story time about when I broke off my 1.5-year engagement with my ex-fiance. We met on a movie set, he was playing my boyfriend, and within a week, we were already calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend. 2 months into the relationship, he convinced me to move to LA with him because we both wanted to pursue acting seriously, and he was an established model already. He had worked in Tokyo and Paris as a model. Of course, I was so in love. I said yes, and I left my family, which was really heartbreaking for them. I will totally always regret that decision because I left way too soon. I was so young. We struggled for money in LA, but I decided to get a serving job, so I was making more money than he was because he was working at a movie theater making $8 an hour. Because of this, I had to pay for a lot of the bills, and I even started helping him pay off his school loans. We also shared a banking account, which was terrible because I was putting in way more money than he was. I hated the apartment we lived in because I would wake up with roaches in my hair, so I decided to get a second serving job. When I asked him to get a second job as well, he said no because he was very happy at his job. Part 2 is up. too. So I asked my fiance if he could get a second job to help me out with the bills, and he said no. I would tell my mom and sisters about the situation, and they would tell me that he should definitely be helping me out more, and I just would make up excuses for him, and I just thought it's okay, he can work at the movie theater and I will work my 2 jobs. At this point, I was paying for most of the rent, most of the bills, and his student school loans. I owed $20,000, you guys, and I was paying for all of that. I even got a 3rd job because I wanted to save up to move out of that crappy apartment. Finally, I got hired at the strip club as a cocktail waitress, and I was able to quit all of my other jobs. My ex-fiance was definitely happy with the amount of money I was making at the strip club. Of course, he felt absolutely no pressure to get a new job and help me out. I finally put my foot down and told him we were moving to a better apartment because I was not happy in the apartment we were in. I told him he had no right to say no because I was the one paying for everything. We found the perfect apartment and I loved it. It was absolutely beautiful and I felt so at home there. Then one night I was sexually assaulted at the strip club. Of course, I was really affected by it. At first he was supportive, but after a few days he basically told me to get over it. When he told me to just get over the sexual assault that I experienced at the strip club, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the man I was about to marry would be so insensitive. And then I just started realizing, wait, I am paying for everything. I pay for your bills, I pay for your rent, I pay for your student loans, and you're here telling me to just get over this sexual assault. It was like someone had put a mirror to my face and was showing me the truth. The final straw was when I told him I wanted to quit the strip club because I didn't want to be in that environment and I didn't want to see the man that had sexually assaulted me again. He said, absolutely not, you can't quit, the money is too good. And that's when I broke up with him. I told him that I couldn't be with someone who didn't care enough about me and only really cared about the money and to be kept. He was so comfortable with me paying for everything and him just chilling at a job where he got paid $8 an hour while I was busting my butt every single night. He told me I would never find anyone better than him. The breakup was amicable, thank God. He didn't stress me out or anything. He kind of said, you know, you'll be back. Of course, I never went back. Know your worth and be with someone who actually cares about you. Story time about how my modeling agency fat shamed me. Today's society has all these beauty standards for us women, and trust me, it gets to me. Back in 2015, I got with a new modeling agency. I actually submitted online, which means they didn't actually see me before they accepted me, so they made an appointment for me to come in and meet my agent. Well, as soon as my agent saw me, she was speechless. She asked me how tall I was and I said 5'2", which they already knew. Then she said, oh, okay. She looks me up and down and says, well, I guess we could use you for shoe modeling. Shoe modeling? Excuse me? She wanted me to notice that her reaction to me was visceral. As the meeting goes on, she asked me what experience I have, and I told her, which I did have quite a lot of experience. I explained to her that I would love to do makeup ads, hair ads, so basically just model with the top half of my body, which to this she said, yeah, you can do that. But then again, she says, I think we'll be able to use you more for shoes. I always want models with small feet. I was literally holding back tears as I was sitting in that chair. Then she says to me, you know what? Maybe if you gain some weight, you could try to be a curvy model. You know, maybe gain 20 pounds. It's probably the only way you'll end up modeling. And when she said this, a tear fell down my face. I couldn't believe that I was just told that the only way that I would ever model was if I gained 20 pounds. And that's when I basically quit. I didn't look for modeling work after that, and they never got me any work. In fact, zero. The way I overcame this was actually just talking to my family, surrounding myself with the people that love me and really care about me. Because ultimately, your family are the people that care about you the most, and the ones that will remind you that you are perfect the way you are. By the way, that agent got fired afterwards. Haha, bye. My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer's not my story time, send me an Instagram. I know you guys are gonna all say yes immediately, but hear me out. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. My best friend and I actually met him at a bar. That night, I never expected that he would ever come after me. I consider my best friend the prettier of the two of us, so I'm used to her getting hit on instead of me. But that night, my boyfriend came to me. He talked to me pretty much the entire night, and my best friend told me to go for it. So I did. He and I spent the night together, and after that, we were inseparable. To the point where he wanted me to move in with him after 2 months. My parents thought I was absolutely crazy and they didn't want me to move in with him, but I did anyway. I come from a Latino family, so this was absolutely reprehensible. I went against my family's wishes and they actually stopped speaking to me for a little bit, but luckily I got them back. My boyfriend during that time gave me all his support. He told me that my family would come around eventually and that they would see that we were in love. So living together was the logical next step. After 3 months of living together, I knew that I wanted to marry him, and he would talk about marriage all the time. He asked me what kind of ring I would want and what I would want for the proposal. We even started talking about our honeymoon. I was also starting to get in the best shape of my life. I was looking super snatched. My boyfriend told me that he loved the way that I look, but that he didn't want me to get skinny. Again, I just felt like he was supporting me and loving me. Around this time, my best friend started dating somebody. After a few weeks, they got really serious about the relationship. And of course, we went on double dates. After the 3rd double date, I noticed that my boyfriend was getting a little annoyed. I got the feeling he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend. Follow for part 2. confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimers not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I asked him if he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend, and that's when he said no. But every time we would go on double dates, he would get in such a bad mood. 3 weeks ago, my best friend told me that she was moving in with her boyfriend. And when I told my boyfriend that they were moving in, his face almost went green. I asked him what was wrong and he said nothing. After that, he went into the bathroom and didn't come out for 40 minutes. Again, I asked him if he was okay and he said yeah. And I sat him down and asked him to be honest with me. That's when he said, I'm attracted to your best friend. Instantly started to cry because I had already been suspecting it. He explained to me that he didn't have any feelings for her until she got a boyfriend, and that he felt that he had some sort of ownership over her. Before my best friend got a boyfriend, the three of us would hang out a lot. And not once then did I ever get a feeling that he was attracted to her. He told me that he would never act on his feelings, but he didn't want to go on any more double dates. I asked him if he wanted to be with her instead of me, and he said absolutely not. He said that I was the love of his life and that attraction only meant attraction, that he didn't have feelings for her. A few days later, he took me to the most expensive restaurant in our city and asked me to marry him. But I didn't know what to say. I can't stop thinking that he's attracted to my best friend. Part 3 is up. My friend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. What should I do? Disclaimers not my story time. Sending me on Instagram. After he proposed, I told him I didn't know what to say. He told me to think it over. I finally decided to tell my best friend what my boyfriend had told me, that he had confessed that he was attracted to her. First, she laughed. I told her no, I'm serious. He confessed that he's attracted to you. That's when she told me I needed to break up with him. That's when I told her that he had also proposed. And she said, well, then you really need to break up with him now. That's when she told me that she didn't want me to resent her and that it was completely out of her control. And I didn't. I promised her that I would never resent her for my boyfriend being attracted to her. It's not like she ever did anything on purpose to make him feel attracted. She also told me that marrying him right now would be rushing into it. And she's kind of right. We've only really known each other for 6 months. Then she told me that she's never gotten the feeling that he's attracted to her. She's never caught him looking at her or anything like that. So now her theory is that he's looking for an easy way out and that he probably wants me to break up with him. But my boyfriend is still sweet and super affectionate. He's constantly showering me with love. My best friend thinks that if I stay with him, our relationship will suffer. I've known my best friend longer. What should I do? Time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Should I leave him? Disclaimers is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I'm so sad about the palette. My fiance and I met a few years ago through friends. When we first met each other, I had a really bad first impression of him. First off, he was completely up himself. All he did was talk about himself and never once asked me questions. We were surrounded by other people, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt when he asked me out. I said yes, but our first date was kind of the same. He only really talked about himself, his career, the things he likes to do, his favorite foods, his family, his dog. I eventually just started volunteering information because he wouldn't really ask me. After our date, I didn't speak to him for a full 2 weeks. I was really turned off by his attitude, but then he messaged me saying that he was really nervous and that he realizes that he probably could have been a little more talkative. I said, yeah, you could have been. I told him how I really felt and he did apologize and he asked me out to dinner again. This time I invited him to my apartment and he made us a full 4-course meal. By the way, he's a chef. Obviously, that night, I completely fell in love with him. He made all of my favorite foods, but the gourmet version. A few months later, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. There were still a few things that I didn't like about him, though. Like, he never really had anything to talk about other than himself. Exactly a year after we met, he decided to propose, and I said yes. But when I asked him to do things for the wedding, he says no. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Disclaimers is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. To be honest, when he asked me to marry him, I was totally blindsided. Honestly felt like our relationship was starting to get stale. So when he asked me to marry him, I was like, for real? He told me that I was the first person who ever made him feel important. And looking back, I realized that it's because he only talked about himself and I really let him talk about only himself. Anyway, we immediately said yes out of the excitement. But when I called my mom to tell her, I was actually crying, which is like, okay, maybe I shouldn't marry him then. A few weeks into our engagement, we hadn't talked about planning at all. So I decided to ask him, like, what do you want the wedding to be like? That's when he told me that he didn't really care, but that he would just give me money for it. I mean, on one hand, that makes me really happy because I don't want my parents to have to pay for the wedding, and he has a lot of money. But on the other hand, I want him to be involved, especially for the food because he's a chef. I decided to hire a wedding planner because my job is extremely busy. I work in marketing. Asked him to go to a few meetings with me. He said no. When I finally found the perfect wedding planner, I asked my fiance if we could go have lunch with him, and he said no. This is when I blew up in his face. I asked him why he wasn't participating at all. That's when he told me that he was too busy at the restaurant, that he didn't have time to do anything with the wedding. I was like, okay, fine. When it came time to choosing the caterers, I demanded that he go with me. He told me that he would try to get off work, but he never did. Every time I tried to schedule it, he would say that he was busy with work. That's when I told him that his restaurant, which is super fancy, should just cater the whole wedding. And he said no. He told me they were way too busy and ready to get a Michelin star, so there was absolutely no way they could cater his wedding. That's when he said, you can handle it, I trust you. I went home and cried the entire night. Part 3 is up. mom about how my fiance refuses to help me plan our wedding. Claimers on my story time is sending me on Instagram. After I got home and cried, he came home and asked me what was wrong. That's when I told him that he didn't seem excited about the wedding, and that leaving all the planning to me made me feel like I was his employee, as if I had nothing better to do, which I do have my career just like he has his. Not to mention the fact that me picking everything I want for our wedding makes it feel like it's my wedding and not ours. He told me that I was overreacting. He also said that he was excited for the wedding, but that he was too tired and too busy to even think about it. That's when I told him that I was really busy and I was really tired too. And he begrudgingly told me that he would carve out some time this week so that we could speak to some of the caterers. I told the wedding planner and he started setting up some meetings. But of course, my fiance canceled on the first two. He did show up to the third one, but all he did was criticize the food. Then we went cake tasting. I expected this to be fun. When my friends have had cake tastings for their wedding, they always have so much fun. As soon as we showed up to the cake shop, he asked me, "Where did you find this?" That's when I told him that our planner had found it. He said it looked like a supermarket bakery. That's when I told him that I don't mind supermarket bakeries and that it was probably just as good as a French bakery. He laughed and said, "Wow, you're funny, babe." We tasted the cakes and he actually liked them. Thank God. But then he requested to go to more cake tastings. We ended up going to 5 other places. This was already too much for me. I got a new account at work and I'm still trying to lose weight for the wedding. So him making me run around trying to taste cake is like the straw that broke the camel's back. After 2 weeks, we finally decided on a cake flavor. Most people must have fun planning their weddings, right? But I just feel like I'm drowning. I have to make all the important decisions on my own. I decided to involve my mom and sister and they've helped me so much. Of course, the wedding planner is helping me too, but ultimately the decisions have to be made by me. He hasn't made any effort to help me with anything else. I kinda wanna break up with him, but I feel like this isn't a big enough reason to break up with him. What should I do? Secretly hate my husband, but I can't leave him. Disclaimer is not my story time. On Instagram. My husband and I have only been married for 2 months. We dated on and off for almost 7 years. So when he finally proposed, I was actually really happy. The problem is that we never lived together before we got married. He never wanted to move in with me when we were dating. He also had this thing where he wouldn't want me to come to his apartment randomly. He would always schedule times where I could hang out with him at his apartment. This all seems suspicious, but I really wanted to marry him, so I just decided to overlook those things. But now that we're married, I see why he didn't want me to come over and why he had all these strange rules. It turns out that he's incredibly messy, lazy, and is super picky about the food he eats. So now that I'm his wife, I'm constantly having to clean up after him. Every single time he goes to the toilet, he always leaves skid marks, or for some reason, he always has like explosive poop and it goes everywhere on the bowl. So every single time I go to the bathroom after he does, I'm always having to clean it up. And it makes me so angry that I have to clean up after him that I have begun to hate him. Also, he's super picky about his food. We can never go to restaurants because he never wants anything on the menu. And if we ever do go to a restaurant, we have to go wherever he wants. I love all types of cuisine, especially Indian, Mediterranean, Japanese, but he thinks it's gross. He comes from a very American family. He grew up eating chicken nuggets and grilled cheeses. To him, anything with some spice is way too much. That means I can't cook what I want because he always complains about the smell. Thankfully, he's got an office that's 30 minutes away. So when he leaves, that's when I cook. But I have to make sure to air out the apartment before he gets home. I'm always doing his laundry and cleaning up after him. Every single time he shaves, he leaves hair everywhere. I actually hate this man now. I told him that I don't want to live with him anymore, but he freaked out. He's begging for me to stay, but I'm so unhappy. What should I do?